Hey legends, welcome along to Hellmouth Hotline. I'm your host, Rodney Stewart. We're getting into a little bit more of Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 3. This is episode 5, entitled Homecoming. So in this episode, we get one of those stories that's a standalone sort of a story. It's not really connected to the bigger picture of the series. Kinda. You find that in a few episodes throughout the run of each season. Usually there's one big overarching storyline for the entire season, and then you get a handful of little standalone stories. Like there was one in season 1, there was a couple in season 2. You know, the episodes where you're watching it and you think, I could skip over this, it doesn't seem that important. And I was getting the feeling of that in this episode, but like those other episodes, there's always something in there that's, you know, going to be really, really important for the bigger picture, even though it's a more or less a standalone story. So in this one, Homecoming, it's about the homecoming dance, and Buffy's feeling left out once again in this episode. It's just everything is piling up on her once more. Plus she's holding the secret that Angel's back. She turns into a bit of a bitch in this episode too. At the beginning of it, Scott turns up again and asks her to dance. She agrees to go with him, and she goes to check an Angel, and she's keeping an eye on him. And you know, this guy, even after everything that he did, he was saved by the spell to restore his soul. Too late to actually save him from being sent to hell. He gets killed. He gets sent to hell in a hell dimension where time moves more slowly than it does in the real world, which meant he was down there for hundreds, maybe thousands of years before he got a chance to come back. When he did eventually get back, he proved himself that he was strong enough to survive the dimension, not become the monster that everybody thought he was going to become, and prove himself that he was actually still in enough control to save Buffy in the last episode. And she waltzes in like a little bitch in this episode, gives him some blood to drink, and, you know, tells him, you know, everything's changed. I'm not going to tell anybody you're back, especially Giles, and I'm also seeing someone, and he makes me happy. That's what I need right now, a reliable guy, sort of a thing. You know, it's just a real, after everything that this guy's been through, even after all the sketchy shit that he did in season 2, you know, everything he's been through and the space between season 2 and at this point, you know, it's a bit of a kick in the teeth for the man. So that's the last we see of Angel in this episode. But Buffy very swiftly gets a kick in the teeth the following morning whenever Scott breaks up with her, and saying that, you know, she's not the girl that he met. She was so full of life. Now she just seems, you know, distracted all the time. And you know, she promises that, you know, you're going to see a different side to me here. And he's like, I'm sorry, and he walks away. And at school, turns out Buffy's been monitored by a couple of guys in a van. They're using, like, you know, it's like the whole James Bond setup, spy equipment, you know, FBI, you name it, you know, all this surveillance equipment. They're keeping an eye on her. And we finally get to meet the mayor in this episode. Now, for me, I kind of got the feeling that these guys were involved with the mayor. Maybe they were working for him, sort of a deal. That's not the case. But we get to meet again Mr. Trick, the vampire that came to Sunnydale when Faith turned up. You know, the ancient vampire that was hunting her down, his little sidekick that ran off at the end of that episode. He turns up in this one, and he is setting up this competition called SLAYER Fest 98, where he is pretty much going to set the two Slayers up as targets for this group of various different types of demons and people that are just, you know, they're not for the hunting side of things. They're going to be hunting down the two Slayers, and Mr. Trick's going to make a mess load of money out of it. So that's the big threat in this episode. But back at school, it's time to get the photographs taken for the yearbook, the final yearbook. They're in their last year at school, and lead up to the homecoming dance, they're getting the yearbook photos taken, and Cordelia is reminded to go and tell Buffy to come get her photograph taken. She's training with Faith in the library, but Cordelia is that intent at, you know, campaigning to get herself the title of Homecoming Queen that she forgets to tell Buffy, and it's not till the next day when Buffy mentions to the group that, you know, at least I'm going to get my photograph in the yearbook and whatnot, and she's already kind of devastated because one of the things that she has to do to stay in school is get a glowing report from a teacher. So it's one of the conditions of her getting back into school. She has to meet these different pieces of criteria, and one of them is to get a good report from a teacher. So she goes to see her favourite teacher in the school, and the teacher doesn't even remember who she is. So she's kind of devastated because of that. And then she finds out she's missed the yearbook photographs, and it's Cordelia's fault. So they face off at school, and Buffy decides, alright, screw Cordelia, I'm going to compete for Homecoming Queen as well. So we get a good bit of comedy out of the relationship between Buffy and Cordelia in this episode, as well as they're fighting with each other to get to become Homecoming Queen. While all this is going on, of course, we get to meet the demons and whoever else is in to get involved with this Slayer Fest. Mr. Trick gets them all together. There is twin German assassins, Hans and Frederick Grenstuhler. Probably butchered that name altogether. And they're been controlled by this guy that's, you know, he's in a wheelchair. These two assassins are working for him. It turns out this is who it was that was in the van keeping Buffy under surveillance earlier on. A dangerous game hunter called Frolly Kulak, a demon of the Makuat clan, and Lyle Gorch comes back with his new wife, Candy. If you don't remember who Lyle Gorch was, he was in the episode Bad Eggs that I believe was in season 2 of Buffy. He is one of these like hillbilly vampires. He turned up with his brother originally in Bad Eggs. The brother gets killed, and he got away at the end of that episode. Xander and Willow try on the homecoming outfits. Tension builds between the two of them until they finally kiss. So this has been building on and off from season 1 and the very first episode of season 2. We thought something was going to happen between the two of them. Then that didn't happen, and of course Oz came into the series. Willow's with him, Cordelia is with Xander, so there's this crazy disaster about to happen, basically. There's a lot of tension between the two of them, and they spend the last of the episode feeling guilty as hell for pretty much, you know, cheating on their respective others. On homecoming night, Buffy is collected by a limo. They were planning on the gang getting a limo together and going to the dance together. The guys that were monitoring Buffy earlier on in the episode overheard Buffy mention about the limo, and it'll pick up her and Faith to take him to the homecoming dance. But whenever Buffy opens the door to get into the car, there's no sign of Faith. Cordelia is there instead. Cordelia gives Buffy a note from the rest of the gang. She opens it and reads it out, and it's pretty much, we're not going to travel with you to the dance. Take this time for you and Cordelia to sort out whatever the hell problem there is between the two, because you're ripping the friendship of everybody apart here. And P.S. the limo costs an absolute fortune, so sort out your shit and get it dealt with. So eventually the limo pulls up somewhere, and they're like, finally we're here. But they hear the driver getting out of the car, and they hear his footsteps running from the car. The two of them get out. They discover they're nowhere near the school. They're in an isolated location, and beside the car there is a video player with a TV just sitting there, and there's a little note saying press play, and they turn it on, and there's a message from Mr. Trick addressed to Buffy and Faith. Of course there's no sign of Faith, so the situation is they were trying to set up the two Slayers, but Cordelia got mixed up and she's there instead of Faith, and they're told about the hunting of the Slayers in Slayer Fest 98. And just as the video finishes, the guys that are in the Slayer Fest begin the attack on Buffy and Cordelia, believing Cordelia to be Faith. So there's a few moments where Cordelia gets the opportunity to say to some of these guys, tell your friends I'm not a Slayer, let me go, sort of a deal. They are attacked by Frally. He gets caught up in one of his own bear traps. They get the gun off him, his gun, find out how many people are hunting them down. They make a run for it, and they seek shelter in a cabin. And in there, they find a phone, and they're attempting to ring the school, the library, to get hold of the guys, let them know about the situation. But the phone is soon cut off, and it's the guy that's controlling the two twin assassins, the guy in the wheelchair. He's one step ahead technology wise. Turns out the two corsages that was in the limo for Buffy and Cordelia have trackers on them, so they've been tracked the whole time, and they haven't made the connection. They don't know how these guys are keeping up with them, but they are. They kind of begin to bond when Cordelia admits that she's in love with Xander, and Buffy reveals that she spent a year's allowance on the dress that she's wearing. And, it's a bit of a heartfelt moment between the two of them. We get to see past the hard exterior of Cordelia in this episode. She lets down her walls and lets Buffy in a little bit. And Buffy does the same for Cordelia and kind of brings the two of them a little bit closer. The demon Kulak arrives, breaks into the cabin and fights with Buffy until the two German assassins turn up and fire a grenade into the cabin. Buffy and Cordelia manage to escape through a window, but Kulak is killed in that explosion. Upon arriving at the library, Buffy and Cordelia find Giles has been knocked unconscious by Lyle and Candy, and the fight starts on there again. Buffy manages to stay Candy but is knocked out in the process. Of course, Lyle steps in, and Cordelia gets the nerves up, and she gets into his face. And she scares off Lyle by persuading him that she's a bigger threat than Buffy is. She gives him the look that would defeat any man on his steps. A woman looks at you that way, you back down, you walk away. And that's what happens with him in this episode. So he disappears again. This is his second appearance, and off he goes again. When Buffy and Giles regain consciousness, they discover the tracking devices in the corsages. The two assassins turn up. Buffy distracts them as they enter the school, managing to plant the trackers on each of them. So very quickly, one of the assassins has a tracker on him, the other assassin has the other tracker on him. They're in two different rooms, and their earpieces, they've got the guy that's back at the house that Mr. Trick set the whole thing up, and he's giving them orders of where to shoot, where to aim and whatnot. And they eventually think they're about to take out the two Slayers, but they shoot each other down through a wall. And this guy's left in the room thinking, he on his computer or monitor, you see the little flashing red lights of the trackers disappearing, and he's like, yes, I've won. But during this, there's a knock at the door, and Mr. Trick was escorted away from the house. So we cut over to see where he's at, and he ends up in the mayor's office. And we get to see a lot of the mayor in this episode. We don't discover anything really about him, other than he's a clean freak. He's got the first thing you see him doing in his office in the episode is he's constantly cleaning and washing his hands. He seems to be a germaphobe, and one of the guys that's working for him, he actually gets him to put his hands on the table, and this guy, he's I wouldn't say nervous, I would say he's more terrified of the mayor. And the mayor, he's not the sort of character that comes across as being I know he turns out to be the big bad villain in this series, but he's not one of these guys that promotes a lot of fear whenever he's on screen and you're talking to him. He's very much, the clean freak in this one. He's saying to the guy, cleanliness is next to godliness, and you need to wash your hands after every meal, under your fingernails and whatnot. And that's he's a strange, weird sort of a character. But at the end of the episode, Mr. Trick gets escorted into the office, and the mayor recruits him to help control the rebellious youth of Sunnydale. And it's obvious that he knows that Mr. Trick is a vampire. He shows no fear of Mr. Trick, so we know there's a lot more to this mayor than he's letting on in this episode. So that's the big important part of this episode. You get that introduction to the mayor that's going to be the big bad in this season. And at the end of the episode, Buffy and Cordelia, they finally arrive at the homecoming dance, just as the envelope has been opened to reveal who the winner is. And the two of them have been, they turn up, looks like they've been kicked around the streets. They're covered in dirt, the dresses are ripped, and they have a little moment. Cordelia is like, after everything we've been through, this competition, and she's going to go down the path of not that important, but Buffy's like, that's really, really important sort of thing. And Cordelia changes her tune straight away, agrees with her. So they're excited to hear which of the two of them have won, and the envelope is opened. Turns out that it's a tie, and you think to yourself, okay, right, it's not a bad way to end the episode. The two of them were fighting with each other the whole way through it over homecoming queen. Now the two of them are going to be tied together as tied winners, which isn't the case. It's two other girls that were in the running for the title have won, and at the end of the episode, Buffy and Cordelia just kind of leave the dance devastated. So there's a fair bit of comedy in this episode as well, particularly between the two of them, and a lot of relationship building, and some complications been added into other friendships as well. Now, I did say in my last review of Buffy season 3 that I'm fairly lost in this episode or this season to the details of it. I do have a memory, obviously. I was talking about the mayor just there, and I know that he's the big villain of season 3, but it's how you get there to the end of the series that I'm fairly clueless at. I'm having a good time of it. I'm looking forward to checking out more of these episodes, and yes, definitely don't be skipping over it. Don't be thinking just because it's one of these episodes where you're starting to watch it and you think, yeah, this is one of these ones that, it's not going to really change the bigger picture of the series or the season. I could skip over this one and go to the next episode. Don't do it. It's definitely a running thing. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that even the standalone episodes have a little piece of that bigger picture in there as well. So I enjoyed it. It's great. So that's going to do it for this episode. I'll be back tomorrow again. We're going to be doing A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, is it we're doing tomorrow? Yes, Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child, as tomorrow's episode. So I'm looking forward to checking that out, and talk to you all then. This has been a production of Coin